My stepdaughter invited her biological father to live with us without asking me. When I objected, she said it was none of my business. I packed up and left, leaving the rent in his name. She understood too late. Don't forget to subscribe and share your experiences below. Let's get started. You're not my real dad. It's not your business. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Maddie's words were delivered with that flat, deliberate cruelty that only a daughter can summon when she wants to cut deeper than a knife. She didn't shout. She didn't tremble. She just said it like a truth I should have already known, like a fact I had been foolish enough to ignore all these years. And in that moment, my world shifted. It wasn't just the words. It was the coldness behind them. Maddie was 24 now, a woman grown, but she stood before me like a stranger. Her eyes, which I had once watched sparkle at Christmas lights, at birthday cakes, at the keys to her first car, were empty of me. She didn't look at me as a father, or even as a man who had spent half his life trying to fill that hollow where her real father had abandoned her. She looked at me as if I had intruded, as if the home I had built, the roof I had kept over her head, the meals I had sweated to provide, all belonged to someone else. The crime? I had dared to object when she announced that John, her biological father, the man who had disappeared from her life for over a decade, would be moving into our house. She didn't ask. She didn't negotiate. She simply declared it, like a queen reclaiming land that was never hers to give away. And when I said no, when I told her this wasn't how I saw our family, she drove the stake in with that single sentence. It's not your business. I stood there, stunned. All I could hear was the echo of years. Since Maddie was 10 years old, I had been there. Not as a guest, not as a visitor, there. The small town in Ohio where we lived was ordinary, unremarkable, but in that modest house, I tried to build something solid. I drove her to dance classes, to soccer games, to high school parties when she was too nervous to drive herself. I sat in the bleachers in the biting cold, watching her miss goals, stumble, cry, and I was the one who lifted her back up. When her friends went on trips she couldn't afford, I paid. When her car broke down at 18, I was the one lying on the frozen driveway with a wrench in my hand, cursing the rusted bolts while she sat inside, scrolling on her phone. When college letters arrived, I opened my wallet. Tuition, books, rent. It all flowed from me, silently, steadily, without complaint. Her father wasn't there. John had vanished when she was still a child, swallowed up by excuses and other women, too weak to shoulder what being a parent demanded. Maddie cried for him in those early years, yes. She clung to photographs, whispered that maybe he'd call. But he didn't, and so I stepped in. Not because I had to, not because anyone asked me to, but because I thought that's what love meant, to take on what another man threw away. I raised her as my own. I gave her my name in everything but blood. And I told myself that someday she would see, that someday she would look at me, not through me, and say two simple words, thank you. But the years stretched on, and those words never came. Instead came the comparisons. Subtle at first, then sharper as she grew older. Dad wouldn't have made me do that. Dad would understand. Dad. She always said Dad when she spoke of him, never John. As if his absence gave him more weight, more holiness. As if the man who walked away earned more reverence than the man who stayed. I learned to swallow it, to let it pass. I told myself she was young, confused, searching for something in him that wasn't there. I told myself my patience would be rewarded, that love would prove itself stronger than blood. But on that night, in the living room I had paid for, standing on the carpet I had vacuumed, surrounded by furniture I had worked overtime to afford, she stripped away the last illusion. It's not your business, not my business, whether a man who had abandoned her could walk back in and live off the roof I had provided. Not my business. After 14 years of paying her bills, driving her through snowstorms, nursing her through heartbreaks, teaching her how to change a tire, how to file taxes, how to stand on her own feet. Not my business after every dollar, every hour, every sacrifice. Do you know what it feels like to be erased in a single sentence? To watch every year, every effort, Every sleepless night vanish like chalk washed from pavement? That was the feeling. That was the moment I realized. I was not her father in her eyes. I was a placeholder, a shadow, a man who gave but would never be enough, because my blood didn't run in her veins. I remember the silence after she said it. It wasn't the silence of shock. It was heavier than that. It was the silence of understanding, the kind that crashes down when the truth you've been denying finally reveals itself. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. What would have been the point? To beg her to see me, to remind her of everything I had done? Gratitude cannot be demanded. It has to live in the heart. And in hers, I saw only indifference. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the glow of a single bulb spilling across the receipts and bills I had left unpaid for my own needs, so I could cover hers. My hands trembled, not with rage but with clarity. I had given Maddie 14 years of my life, 14 years of my strength, my money, my care. And all it earned me was those 6 words. It's not your business. That was the betrayal. Not that she wanted her father back. I could have understood that. Blood calls, even to ghosts. No, the betrayal was that she had no room for me at all. That I was disposable. That the man who abandoned her could walk back in and take my place without question. While I, the one who stayed, was cast aside like furniture left at the curb. It was then I realized, love without gratitude is slavery. And I had been a slave long enough. John came back the way men like him always do. Empty-handed, full of excuses and shameless. There was no apology, no hesitation, no attempt to ask if it was all right. One day he was gone, absent for years, a ghost I thought Maddie had finally stopped chasing. And then, without warning, he appeared on the porch like a salesman, except the only thing he was selling was himself. And Maddie bought it. She didn't just let him in. She glorified him. It was as though the years of silence had made him bigger in her imagination. She looked at him with eyes that once dismissed me, eyes I had prayed would one day hold pride for what I'd done. She laughed at his half-baked stories, clung to his promises as if they weren't made of smoke. To her, he wasn't the man who had abandoned her. He was Dad, the title she had refused me, even after 14 years of my devotion. And suddenly he was in my house. At first he acted like a guest, but not for long. Within days, he carried himself like an owner, drifting from room to room with a casual arrogance that made my skin crawl. He opened my fridge and drank my beer without asking. He rummaged through my tools in the garage, leaving them scattered, rusting in the damp air. He borrowed my car, and returned it with an empty tank, crumbs ground into the seat. I would come home from work, exhausted, ready for the peace of my own space, and there he would be. Feet on the coffee table I had built with my own hands, television blasting, his laughter rattling the walls. A man who had contributed nothing, who had walked away from his child when she needed him most, now lived off the sweat I had spent a lifetime pouring out. And Maddie defended him. He's changing his life, she said. He just needs a second chance. He's trying. Can't you see that? Trying? What had he done but eat my food, waste my gas, sleep under my roof? What had he tried except to make himself comfortable in the home that I paid for, in the life that I had built? But to Maddie, none of that mattered. All she saw was the illusion she wanted, the fantasy of a father who cared. She didn't notice, or didn't want to notice, that John had not changed. He still avoided responsibility. He still chased easy comforts. He was the same man who had walked away, except now he had found someone else to carry him, me. Every day I watched him take more space, more air, more of Maddie's loyalty. The man who had given nothing was rewarded with worship. And the man who had given everything, me, was left with silence, treated like an intruder in the very house I had kept alive. Do you know what it feels like to live with a stranger who is praised as a king while you, the provider, the laborer, are reduced to nothing? It is suffocating. It is humiliation carved into your bones. I would sit at the table and watch Maddie laugh at his jokes, watch her light up at his smallest gestures. A pat on the shoulder, a story of some old memory from when she was too young to understand who he truly was. And I would think, This is what my years amounted to. This is what my sacrifices bought me. Not gratitude, not respect, not even acknowledgement. Only this, the privilege of watching her worship a man who had once chosen the door over her. The nights were the worst. John would stumble in late, smelling of cigarettes and cheap liquor, while I lay awake in the dark. I could hear him rummaging in the kitchen, eating leftovers I had paid for, humming tunelessly as if he belonged there. Sometimes Maddie would stay up waiting for him, sitting at the table, eyes wide, listening as he spun tales of how he'd changed, how he was different now, how he wanted to be a real father. And she believed him. Meanwhile, I, who had never left, who had been there through every scraped knee, every tuition bill, every broken car, was invisible. My presence was taken for granted, my absence unthinkable, yet my worth was dismissed. It was like living in a nightmare. One evening, I walked into the living room and found John sitting in my chair, a beer in his hand, the television blaring some football game. Maddie sat at his feet, laughing, eyes shining in a way I had never seen when she looked at me. I stood there watching, and for a moment I felt as though I were the stranger, as though I were the one intruding. He turned to me then, grinned, and said, "You don't mind if I borrow the truck tomorrow, do you? Got a few things to take care of." Borrow? He didn't ask. He announced. As if my labor, my possessions, my time, all of it were his by right simply because of the blood that tied him to Maddie. I wanted to shout, to throw him out right then, to demand Maddie choose between the man who stayed and the man who left. But when I looked at her, I saw the truth in her expression. She had already chosen. It wasn't about who provided. It wasn't about who had been there. It was about blood. And in that battle I could never win. The weight of it pressed on me every day. The humiliation, the injustice, the bitter knowledge that the man who had abandoned his daughter was now being celebrated for simply showing up, while I, the one who had given my years, my money, my soul, was treated as irrelevant. Every meal he ate was my labor. Every night he slept under my roof was my generosity. Every mile he drove was gas I had paid for. And every smile Maddie gave him was a knife driven deeper into my chest. I lived with a stranger, but worse than that, I lived with the truth. The truth that in Maddie's eyes, John could do no wrong, that his absence had made him holy, while my presence had made me disposable, that the man who had given nothing could return and be welcomed, while the man who had given everything could be erased. And in that truth, something inside me began to break. The night I left wasn't loud. No slamming doors, no shouting, no fight, only silence, the kind of silence that follows when something finally dies. After Maddie's words, "It's not your business," I knew I was done. Not just with John, not just with the house, with all of it, with the years of sacrifice that had turned into chains, with the endless humiliations, the reminders that I was never blood, never truly accepted. I had spent 14 years fighting for a place in that family. 14 years pretending patience would someday be rewarded. But in that single sentence, Maddie gave me the truth I had been too cowardly to face. I was nothing to her. So I decided to act. That evening, when the house was quiet, I walked through each room. I touched the furniture I had bought, the photographs on the walls themselves. I had poured myself into this place. My labor, my money, my love. And yet it wasn't mine. It had never been mine. It belonged to Maddie's fantasy and to John's arrogance. I didn't take much, just what was rightfully mine. Clothes, tools I had bought with my own hands. A few personal items. Books, papers, keepsakes that reminded me of the man I had once been before I lost myself in someone else's life. Everything else I left behind. Let them live in the house built on my sacrifices. Let them choke on it. Before I walked out, I placed the keys on the table. Cold metal against wood. A quiet symbol of everything I was giving up. The house, the lease, the utilities, the repairs. All of it. I transferred the lease to John's name that night with a few strokes on a computer screen. If he thought he was so important, if Maddie thought he was the savior she had been waiting for, then let him prove it. Let him handle the rent, the bills, the responsibilities. I left without a goodbye. The night air was heavy, pressing down on me as I carried my last box to the car. I didn't look back. Not at the windows, not at the door, not at Maddie's room where I had once sat during storms, telling her the thunder couldn't hurt her. Not at the kitchen where I had taught her how to cook when she was 16. Not at the garage where I had fixed her car so she could drive to college. I walked away because staying meant death. Death of dignity, death of self, death of every ounce of respect I still had for myself. The first night in my rented apartment was strange. Small, quiet, empty. But the silence wasn't suffocating. It was clean. For the first time in years, I slept without the weight of resentment pressing down on my chest. For a while there was nothing. No calls, no texts, only silence, as if Maddie didn't notice or didn't care that I was gone. I told myself it didn't matter. I was free. But somewhere deep down I waited. I wanted her to feel it. I wanted her to realize the hole I left behind. And then, a week later, the calls began. At first it was a single message. Maddie's voice shaky, almost uncertain. "Hey, I think I messed up. Can we talk?" I didn't respond. The next day, another. "John isn't paying for the house. He keeps saying he will, but he hasn't. I don't know what to do." I let the message sit. Then more. Desperation creeping in. "The bills are piling up. He spent money on himself and now the landlord's calling me. I can't handle this. Please, please pick up." I read them, listened to them, but I never answered. Because the truth was already written in stone. John wasn't the man she dreamed he was. He was the same failure he had always been. He used her, used the house, used the roof over his head until there was nothing left. He disappeared for days at a time, spending on himself while leaving her with the wreckage. The man she glorified, the man she had chosen over me, turned out to be exactly what I had said from the beginning. A parasite. And now Maddie wanted me back. Not because she respected me, not because she loved me, but because she needed me. Because she realized too late that while John gave her nothing, I had given her everything. But I wasn't going back. Every message was the same. Pleading, apologizing, bargaining. She admitted she had been wrong. Admitted she hadn't realized what she had until it was gone. Admitted John was no father, just a leech. I didn't answer. Not because I hated her. Not because I wanted revenge. But because I finally understood going back meant surrendering to the same cycle. It meant erasing my worth again, burying myself under the weight of a family that had never seen me. I couldn't do it. One evening, as I sat in my small apartment with nothing but the hum of the refrigerator and the faint sound of traffic outside, I listened to one last message from her. Maddie's voice was breaking, desperate. "Please, I'm sorry. I need you. I can't do this without you. He's gone again. He doesn't care. I should have listened to you. I should have respected you. Please come back." The phone trembled in my hand, but I didn't call her back. Because in that moment, I realized something bitter and undeniable. She didn't want me. She wanted the life I had built for her. She wanted the security, the money, the sacrifices. She wanted the safety net she had spat on. And I was done being a net. I placed the phone down, turned it face down on the table, and let the silence return. Maddie had made her choice when she told me it wasn't my business. And I had made mine when I walked out the door. The consequences were hers to carry now. I wasn't going back. Not to her. Not to John. Not to the house that had become my prison. I was free, and she was left with the father she had always wanted. Finally forced to see the truth of who he really was. Now I live alone. A small rented apartment, nothing extravagant, nothing grand. The ceilings are low, the paint chipped in places, the neighbors loud enough to remind me I'm surrounded by strangers. Yet every morning when I wake, I feel something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not joy, not happiness, those are luxuries. But peace. The peace of knowing no one is waiting to drain me dry. No one is calling me, "Not your business," while living off my sweat. I eat at a small table that seats only me. I cook simple meals, eggs, pasta, whatever I can throw together in a single pan. No elaborate dinners for ungrateful mouths. No endless labor to fill bellies that mock me afterward. When the fridge empties, I shop for one. When the bills come, I pay only for myself. It is quieter this way, emptier, but it is honest. And honesty, I've learned, is worth more than family built on lies. Maddie is still out there. I know, because sometimes her voice slips through my phone. Messages I don't answer, calls I let die in silence. Sometimes she begs. Sometimes she rages. Sometimes she tries to reason with me. Each time her tone is different, but the request is always the same. Come back. Fix this. Rescue me from the life I chose. But I don't, because I know what she's really asking. She isn't asking for me. She's asking for the life I gave her. The house I kept alive. The money that kept her safe. The sacrifices I bled for. She misses the net, not the man. And I will not let myself be reduced to that role again. John is still in the picture, but not in the way Maddie imagined. He drifts in and out like he always has. Here when he wants something, gone when he's taken enough. He leaves unpaid bills, empty bottles, broken promises. He fills her with hope in the morning and vanishes by nightfall. He's not a father. He's a shadow that consumes everything good until only regret remains. And Maddie? She finally sees it. I can hear it in her voice, in the cracks when she pleads. She understands now. Blood means nothing when the man behind it is hollow. She traded the one who stayed for the one who ran, and now she has nothing. Sometimes I imagine her sitting alone in that house. The one I built, the one I paid for, now crumbling under unpaid rent, leaking faucets, broken locks. I imagine her listening for footsteps that never come, waiting for John to return, realizing he won't. I imagine her remembering my hands fixing, paying, building, holding, and realizing those hands are gone forever. It should make me bitter. It should make me ache. But instead, it makes me calm, because the truth is finally revealed, not just to her, but to me. All those years, I told myself blood didn't matter, that love, labor, and presence could outweigh biology. That one day stepfather would be enough. But I was wrong. In her eyes, blood mattered more than every sacrifice. John's absence was worth more than my presence. His empty promises meant more than my years of loyalty. And so now I am free. Free from her indifference. Free from her comparisons. Free from the illusion that one day she would thank me. I don't need thanks anymore. I don't need her recognition. What I need is dignity. And I have reclaimed it. Maddie is left with the man she wanted. And I am left with myself. She chose blood over sacrifice. She chose illusion over reality. She chose him. And choices have consequences. She will learn to live with his absence, his failure, his selfishness. And maybe, in her quietest nights, she will think of me. The man who stayed, the man who gave, the man she cast aside. But by then it will be too late. Because once a man sees the truth, he cannot return to the lie. I sometimes wonder what the future holds for her. Will she ever truly forgive herself? Will she ever build something real without destroying it with fantasy? Or will she spend her life chasing the ghost of a father who was never there, while the man who was there walks away forever? I don't know. What I do know is this: my time of servitude is over. My years of being treated like nobody are finished. I may live smaller now, poorer in some ways, but I am richer in the only currency that matters: self-respect. I have no regrets about leaving, only about staying as long as I did. So I leave the question with you. Whoever hears this, whoever has endured thankless devotion, whoever has carried children who were not theirs only to be told they are nothing. Was I wrong? Was I cruel to walk away when the family I built treated me like a stranger? Was I heartless to refuse the calls of a daughter who only valued me when her real father failed her again? Or was I finally, at last, right, to leave them with the truth they had chosen, and to reclaim the dignity they had stolen from me? Tell me, would you have endured it?